Hi everyone, I'm Greg from Pilot Institute. We train drone pilots all over the country.
Hi, my name is Haye from DroneXL, where we cover all the drone news on our website.
Welcome to the latest episode of the PiXL Drone Show, our weekly podcast where we talk to industry professionals about what they do in the UAS space.
From professionals who use drone to fly inspection missions to public safety users or even drone light shows, you will learn on the PiXL Drone Show that drones are much more than just toys.
And before we get started with the show, I did want to announce that Kara is going to be stepping down from the show. We do wish her the best. She has been a great co-host with Haya and I, and we've had a great time hosting PiXL for the last year with her. She's definitely staying in the industry, and we definitely wish her the best, but we know we'll come across her and maybe even bring her on as a guest to talk about her photography. Now, Haya, this has been kind of an interesting week with the release of the Mavic 3, the Mini 3 Pro. How have things been on your side?
It's been very busy, and I've been surprised with how much interest there's been in the DJI Mini 3 Pro. I mean, in a way, it wasn't really surprising, I guess, because there was a lot of interest in the original Mavic Mini and the Mini 2 as well. But I think this drone might actually be more popular than the over-expensive Mavic 3, if I can say that.
Yeah, I think I agree. And I think this was a slightly different reception. The Mavic 3 was a price shock, although this is more expensive, but I think there was such a price shock with the with that drone. And then the issues after the release. Now we don't have you and I have the drone on hands, but it's not being shipped yet. So we don't know what kind of issues there's going to be at grand scale. But yeah, I think this was slightly differently received. So far, I think it's been a positive a note from people. So I'm kind of excited about our guest today. Tim is someone that I've worked with for quite a while. He's with Gresco, so they deal with a lot of different drones and drone manufacturers. As a matter of fact, if you're one of our customers that are enrolled in the deep dive courses, chances are some of these larger drones came from Gresco, came from Tim, because he allows us to test them and everything. So I'm kind of excited to have a discussion with him and talk about public safety, talk about inspections. What are some of the things that you think are going to be discussed today, and the topics that interest you at this stage?
I think in general, when we do these shows, it's fun and interesting to talk to people who are very specific and specialized in how they use their drones, because it kind of takes you away from, let's say, the consumer drones that we're talking about, like the Mini 3, and basically take a deep dive into, okay, so this is how people are using drones in these certain industries. And with Gresco being so based around utilities and power solutions, I really would like to know how they're using drones for their inspections, what kind of drone models, what kind of technology, sensors, payloads, and also the challenges that they run into when it comes to the legislative side or the drone regulatory side that we're living with.
Yep. Yeah, these guys are living and breathing drones. So, well, let's bring him on, and then let's start asking the question. All right, Tim, before we get into the nitty-gritty of everything you do at Gresco, I want to get an idea of how you get into drone. What was the catalyst to getting you involved with the UAS industry?
Yeah, it's a really good question. It kind of goes back a little bit. So I'm retired 23 years in law enforcement. And so back in 2009 or 2010, I was promoted to police chief and decided to go to my city council and the mayor and ask them if I could do that. I think it was like a $600 Verizon grant for a drone at that point in time. And, I said, hey, we're doing some drug search warrants. There's good opportunity to try to keep our folks safe before they're going into make entry into houses, or seeing if there's any type of a dog in the backyard that's going to cause us any problems. And so, it was just more for situational awareness, that type of thing, and overall safety. And I think that was the only time I really got laughed out of the council chamber room and the mayor's office. They said, no police department is going to be, legitimate police department is going to have toy drones out there. So it was definitely a no-go, and which was unusual because most of the stuff they really did support, even if it was a little bit forward-leaning. So they kind of drew that proverbial line right there at drones. So from there, I wound up working at the FBI for a while, had some opportunity to be a part of the Congressional Affairs Unit, and we had briefed members of Congress about the threats that drones pose to national security, which was very enlightening. And then from there, I went on to be the associate director over at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. And so one of the projects that I was working on was the counter drone system, a drone detection system around the big house. And so I got to meet vendors from all over the world that came out with the very best that I guess drone detection had to offer at that point in time. And so Gresco just happened to be one of those companies that came out and participated. And 5 months or so later, got a call about interviewing for a job and being a public safety account manager for their drone program. And I accepted the position. 4 months later, I think you get promoted to the highest level of incompetence sometimes in life. So I'm the director of the team now. So I have a bunch of very smart people that work with me as part of that group. And so it was a journey that you could never really probably script out or think that was actually going to happen the way that it did. But I got to tell you, in 2 years into it now and just really doing a complete deep dive into unmanned technology solutions across the board, as you guys know, I feel like I got to join at a very exciting time, especially with all of the new diversified platforms, domestic and international. So it's been quite a ride, I'll tell you that.
Sounds like you were very much ahead of your time, already seeing the added value of drones for first responders. Can you tell us when you got started with Gresco? How many years ago was that?
2 years ago with Gresco. Yep.
2 years. Wow.
That's right. Coming up on my anniversary, I got to remind my boss.
Yeah. What kind of gifts do you guys get at Gresco? Do you get a drone for your anniversary or no?
Oh my gosh. You know what we get? So it's headquartered out of Forsyth, Georgia. And I'm sort of the Yankee of the group up in Michigan. So when I go down, it was the most interesting, cultural dynamic for me coming into that. I mean, Midwesterners are pretty nice, but man, you go to the South, it's a whole different, type of culture of that, hospitality and just genuinely really nice people. And so I get down there and I remember one of the district managers was making something outside of the warehouse. It turned out to be boiled peanuts. So I don't know if you guys have had boiled peanuts before, but I had no idea what that was. And so it just went from there. Sweet tea, grits, and I just had to learn that we were not going to be working through lunch hours, basically. So that was the thing of the past when I'm down in the South. That's a sacred hour of the day. But just great people and very dedicated to making sure that their customer and owners, it's sort of that other first responder you don't think about all the time. It's the linemen that's out there that are keeping our communities, energized and connected, that play such a critical role there. So it's, man, I tell you what, I have learned a lot over 2 years in that electric utility industry, and also the different mission types that keep evolving here with public safety.
Yeah, you got to be careful with your grits in the South. Yeah, there's procedures to eating your grits correctly in the South, or you're going to get judged. So
that's right. No sugar. Apparently, no sugar. You don't do that. That's not good.
I had no idea. I had my first grits earlier this year. I had no idea what it was, but now I know. So Gresco's been in business for quite some time. Can you tell us more about how and when they started with their drone department and how that fits into their bigger picture?
Yeah, absolutely. So. If you imagine, so they're electric utility supply. So electric utility supply for over 62 years, deeply rooted in the Southeast. And they're in 7 different locations, physical locations, 6 different states. They're headquartered in Forsyth. It's a $500 million a year company that the CEO and a former engineer at the organization said, you know what, these drones are going to be really important someday to the electric utility industry. We know that when we talk about those inspections, trying to prevent outages, power outages and communication outages, there's a whole host of different things. You look at generation, transmission, distribution, all of the renewables. And you see solar farms popping up all over the place. But what's really unique about Gresco is they said, it was about 5-6 years ago, they said, we really got to get a team together. So they created a brand, Gresco Technology Solutions, and said, we really want this group to go and learn as much as they can about this evolving industry, try to understand, most importantly, the use cases for both mission and inspection. Inspection was always their driving focus, or wanted it to be, but as both of you know, public safety was the early adopter. So even though the team's intention was really just to focus on more of the inspection aspects of things, electric utility, especially for cooperatives and some of the municipals, really, the adoption rate is still quite slow. Some of the IOUs and some of the others are much faster, but public safety, they were right out in front of this. So we wound up developing a very large, public safety customer base that's been fantastic, and we've learned so much. But we also have a very, very strong focus, and Gresco's focus is the inspection solutions for unmanned technology. So that's what the CEO's vision was. But public safety is always near and dear to him. But when you think of first responders, especially if you're anywhere in the Southeast in those heavy storm areas, trust me, those linemen, I don't care where you're at in the country, they are vital, and they are definitely, first responders. I remember policing traffic crashes into those telephone poles, electrical poles, and I had no problem directing traffic around those things and not having to be tangled up and all that. They are definitely, hats off to them for the work they do.
Yeah.
So you guys do inspections, you guys do the public safety side of things. What are the services? If our listeners are not familiar, who would be hiring you to do things?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So when people think about, Gresco, we know you're a utility supply company. We know you have this technology brand. So are you a drone service provider? Are you, really what it comes down to is we're an agnostic dealer with a wide variety of pretty much all of the major manufacturers and beyond that we represent, that we are a dealer for. And it's the hardware, as all of you know, it's the software, it's the ancillary peripherals that you need to make that mission or that inspection the very best it can be. And we're moving into the advanced analytic world as well. So really our customer base is very strong in terms of, us trying to empower them to have the right inspection, total comprehensive inspection solution or mission solution for what it is that their use case is. When we first started out, we were kind of like being all things to all people because it was very exploratory. Right now, I can tell you the heaviest focus that we have is in the inspection world. That is where, the vision is coming back into full circle. We will always be dedicated to our public safety customers and make sure that we have those types of unmanned solutions that they need at the ready and continue to pursue that. But, when you really need to be known for something, right? Like the thing that you want to be known for most is we are there to empower utility customers to make sure that they can conduct all of those inspections. And so that's what our heavy focus has been. And there's a lot of different ways that you can go about achieving that. So for us, we really want to provide, industry expertise because again, that's the company we come from. We are the ones that are subject matter experts in that area. And so we have so many resources that we can pull from former linemen to the different engineers and the folks that are working in the field. But the relationships that we have with being a cooperative ourselves, a part of the NRECA, a much larger cooperative national network, you have, again, so many connection points there. And your members are also your owners. So at Gresco, in many ways, it becomes interesting when they're like, the customer's always right. Well, technically they really are, especially when they're your owners, right? So that makes a lot of sense. But having those close-knit relationships on many different levels, not just on the technology solution side, but it gives you a great deal of insight. It gives you direct connection to practitioners in the field and the subject matter expertise. And it also gives you longevity. So being a part of a company that fully supports this type of service, a value-added service, is we're not going away, right? Like Gresco is going to be around. We're around for 62 years. We're going to be around hopefully another 62 or more. And so we continue to grow and expand and develop. And so I think that that's what really sets us apart, as well as that we have this sort of parent company that. They're in this for the long-term game. They want to see these, inspection solutions evolve, and they want to make sure that they are doing everything they can to help minimize those power outages and communication outages that are happening, and also prevent any type of disasters that come from, not having those lines inspected. We see a lot of different fires that are going on, and that are threats to property and life. And so, anyway, so those are really some of the core principles we're really focused on.
So you guys are active in pretty much every state in the country?
Yeah, so we have a national footprint, and Again, I think our superpower is, not only being so connected with the industry itself, but I think the other part of it is being an agnostic dealer. And that is something that, it's taken a while to really kind of understand that to the degree that, if you're telling somebody that's looking for, and if the first question, I don't care which one of us are in this value-added resale business, if the first question that we don't ask is, what are you looking to use this technology for? If that is not the principal thing that we start with, what is the use case? Everything after that, I don't think, from what I'm understanding and what I'm seeing, and this experience is just, it's not going to go well, right? Because everything comes down to, what do you want to use it for? What is that traditional inspection or mission that you're trying to, have an unmanned technology for? And what's the purpose, right? So you want to make sure that it's increasing safety, right? You want to make sure that it is increasing effectiveness and efficiency. And ultimately, what it all boils down to is the deliverable. So what we really focus on, we have two sides to this. We call one of it the Inspector series. The other one is more the Defender series, more mission oriented. But the inspection part of it is, we're going to go ahead and take, whatever that use case is, we're going to put a suggested, group of hardware, software, sensors, and put that whole comprehensive piece together. And we're going to go out and make sure that, first of all, it can conduct that type of data collection that will achieve ultimately the deliverable that they're going to need. Because again, at the end of the day, everything comes down to that deliverable. Is it the return on investment? Is, cost benefit analysis, all of those things that you look at over the course of why would somebody adopt this technology. Of course, many people are also thinking it helps with the environment. We're not using, fixed wing aircraft and, some of the other things that might have a larger, carbon footprint or something to that effect. But least amount of environmental impact is something that, is also important. But overall, it's making sure that you can more efficiently, effectively do proactive inspection work, and you can identify potential failures and integrity issues with structures, critical infrastructures, again, to prevent bad things from happening, not just from communities losing power or losing communications, but also from creating property damage or threat to life. So there's a lot of, very serious aspects to this. And the more that we can help, you think about, these linemen have been doing the work that they've done in terms of inspections basically since the time of Edison, right? You've got all of these, the aging infrastructure out there, especially within electric utility, in some places that, it was built very well, and it was something that was a very high quality product, but, it's not going to last forever. And so when you look at the generation, transmission, when you get to distribution, things get a little bit different, right? The environment is very challenging and very difficult to get to. And the standards for all of the different assets and components that are on those different structures can vary widely. Where transmission towers are a little bit more standard to a certain degree. And within the generation phase, you have to have different inspection solutions that are looking in confined spaces, in vaults, in boilers, in inside the internal components of a hydroelectric dam. So in so many of those GPS denied environments that you need to have something that's gritty, something that can really do some, excellent rendering of imagery. And again, something that's going to really drive at some type of deliverable. When you look at the type of drones for vertical structure inspections, how many telecom and, cell phone towers that we have out there that we're doing inspections of, and, how long does it take to do it? Is there any type of machine learning? And so I was, EPRI had recently put on a presentation at a engineer and operators conference that I was at that, was talking just about that. They're like, machine learning, how are we taking, something like the Skyward drone that's able to do, you can point out your parameters for the 3D scans that are happening, whether it's inside of a power substation or if it is that vertical structure inspection. But how can we take it to the next level where we're doing more than just a 3D scan, but we're really teaching these drones as much as we can to identify all of those different assets and components that are along those structures. And so when we look at a deliverable later, the drone's actually going and inspecting all of those different assets, parts, and components, and giving a report at the end that's basically saying, here are some potential failure points, and then maybe assessing those in certain degrees and rating them. So when you really start looking at how vast our power systems are, and then how we are now with the renewables and, with wind turbines and inspecting leading and trailing edges to make sure the laminate is intact. It's absolutely fascinating to me. So coming from the world of being a public servant for so long at local, state, and federal levels, I mean, closest thing I had to that was I remember my midnight shift commander. We have a night where he just say, you know what, go around the whole city and start, marking down every light pole that's out, just to do this inspection, right? I'm like, man, this is the worst. That is not something I want to do. But knowing where these power outages are out, going and looking to see where there might be issues, again, it's a tireless, situation, and you have vegetation growth, that is impacting, right of ways. And, that encroachment can cause so many problems. And then with disease and infested trees that the limbs are literally going to break off any time. Isn't it great to know ahead of time? We can go fly those, and do long stretches, especially you look at companies right now, like with Census, down in Florida there out of Daytona Beach, they're creating this whole BVLOS fixed wing, go the distance, put a phase 100 megapixel, sensor in it or multispectral, and be able to gather that data. And in some cases, I know folks are trying to run dual missions where they're really just trying to save the time. So it's absolutely fascinating, the type of work that's being done and the use cases that continue to come up every single day. And it's something great to be a part of, and it makes every day interesting. And it's just a lot of problem solving is really what it is, and working with other people to get it accomplished. Far greater, smarter people than me. But I tell you, it's great to be along for that and make sure that they have what they need when they need it.
You can tell that Tim is not passionate about this one bit.
I wasn't sure if when I went over to this in the first place, you get so much fulfillment out of helping people on a daily basis, and I was worried that going to the private sector and, getting into this industry and doing this work, I'm like, I don't know that I'm going to have that much fulfillment out of this, because I really did feel incredibly fulfilled at the other work that I've done, and I loved it. And so it was a real gut check. Is this something that I'm going to be able to do? And I tell you what, the people within our public safety realm alone, at the federal, state, and local level, customers that we have, knowing that we're putting technology like Brink drone technology out there, where if you can put technology between that first responder and whatever that incident or volatile issues that's going on, to help keep them safe, and then also members of the public safe, bringing a otherwise volatile situation to a peaceful resolve using a Brink drone. I mean, come on, it doesn't get any better than that. How could you not feel more fulfilled? You have linemen and you have public safety going home safely to their families at the end of every shift, and you're helping them do that through some really great technology. And so that is exciting. It is fulfilling. And this is the most amazing, time to be a part of an industry like this, at least in my opinion. I'm really enjoying it. Then you get to hang out with Greg and go to some really crazy places that you didn't think that you would ever go.
We've had,
and fly drones. And
we've had some fun trips.
It's too much fun too. I got to make sure my wife, especially with all the traveling I'm doing, and make sure that she doesn't know just how energized I am about this, how exciting it is. I always just say, got to get another plane. I got to go to another really great place and meet with a lot of people I like. And it's really tough, but somebody's got to do it.
Well, sounds like you have energy for 10 and passion for 10. So that part is definitely covered, I think. I love how you were explaining basically how technical and how specific drone flying gets really quickly. Like, it's funny, but when you talk to people, a lot of people don't, they might know what drones are, but typically their starting point or their reference point is like, oh, a drone is a toy for kids. It's something that you can fly. Whereas if you go down the rabbit hole and you talk about how drones are being used, like what we're doing right now, you see how specific it gets. And that kind of brings brings us to the next part of this conversation, training that's involved. I mean, if you want to fly drones commercially, you need to have your Part 107. But listening to you, I can imagine that the training becomes very specific about the equipment that you use, but also the use cases and the missions that you conduct with drones. Can you tell us a little bit about what you guys do in terms of training pilots on equipment, on missions, maybe even for Part 107, and also whether you guys train people outside of the organization as a service to get, let's say, a police department starting up their drone program? So a whole bunch of questions kind of captured in one topic.
No, that's great. And I appreciate that. So training is always very important, right? And then from the world I come from, training is especially important. Also, having safety built into every aspect of what you do is extremely important. So, we are there to help support customers, both inspection and mission oriented customers. Make sure, first of all, we get the highest quality Part 107, type of education and training you can get. The Pilot Institute. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that, right? That's what we help augment our in-person training with. So we do really, we basically do a hybrid is what we advertise and is what we actually conduct for all of our, utility and public safety, industrial and transportation customers. Because to start your program, you want to make sure you're doing it the right way, following the regulations, making sure your compliance standards are in place. You want to build a program that is sustainable, one that's going to be around and something that can be built off of. And so we're always very happy to, team up with Greg over at the Pilot Institute and help augment that off of our other, in person, because some people, they just learn better in person. That's just kind of how it is. And then you've got a whole new group of folks that are learning very well with the virtual setting. And so when you put them both together, we kind of think it's like golden platinum mixed, because it just seems to work out both ways. But and then we always usually bring Greg live into our class anyway. I'll put him on FaceTime anyway, just put him on the spot, be like, hey, there's this question. I can't even answer this question. How about you? So we'll throw it the most, off the wall stuff at him. And for whatever reason, I don't know, he just always has an answer. And so it's always great for us. But you get past that. You're right. 107 is only one part of it. You really got to continue to take it to the next level. And so when we work with our different, customers and partners, industry partners, what we really try to do is make it very collaborative. And because this is so emerging, and because the type of inspections that are being done on critical infrastructure, you got to be very careful. I mean, it's not just when you're flying around a high powered substation and you are at a nuclear power plant, and in some of these places, you have to know what are best practices, what checklists have been put in place, what is the approach that should be used. And so what we do is we work with our industry partners and those practitioners in helping develop those out, and ultimately, develop those specific inspection trainings off of them. One of the ways that we go about doing that is, you go to enough shows and you got the tables and they look great. Like people, they spend so much, time and energy, effort, and resources in a lot of those static displays. And don't get me wrong, those are important. It's good to go to those. And then sometimes you'll have folks that are like, well, we're going to do a parking lot demo where we kind of show you that the drone will fly. It'll go up and it'll come down and that type of thing. And that's great because it's an attention getter and you get to see some of the, maybe, key performance issues of it. But where we really find that, we just started doing it this year. This is like the new part of how we're moving forward. We are conducting inspection demonstrations that are regional and they are immersive. So you're bringing manufacturers out, you're bringing industry practitioners and pilots out that are doing these inspections in all of those different generation, transmission, distribution, and renewable settings, and even industrial. And you're bringing folks that are related to that industry into it, that are trying to understand more about it and learn about it. And you're bringing them in and they're getting the opportunity to see everything from the data collection all the way through processing to post-processing to see what the deliverable ultimately is. So you're every phase of that inspection that's taking place, because the early adopters in the utility industry love the drones for visual inspection purposes, right? So you think of those wooden poles that are everywhere in the distribution side, and they start rotting out. You get woodpeckers taking them out. You have termites, or you have rotting at the top of the poles. They would use like a rubber mallet, and they would fly, or they would have to get a bucket truck with a few people and go and do their own inspections. And if you think about that, pole after pole after pole, I mean, man, that's going to take a lot of time. And I don't know, what the cost, is for a bucket truck all day long with gas and crew. But you start taking those figures and you say, hey, this drone has been great for visual inspection. But now what they're seeing is they're taking it beyond that. They're taking it to the next step. And that's where these advanced analytics and some machine learning and really, just really taking this to the next level is really starting to happen. So electric utility is really starting to adopt this technology, seeing the value in it beyond a visual inspection alone. I mean, I was driving down 75 to go to our headquarters from Detroit, and I get stopped for like, I don't know, it was almost like a 45-minute backup off 75, and I see you've got 2 work crews and then a truck with a boat on the back of it. A lane and a half of traffic is all backed up, blocked off. And the snooper truck is reaching out across over the bridge and underneath it. And they're trying to do the bridge inspection work, but it's causing massive backups. All of these, trucks and everything out there with the boat and everything else. And it's dangerous as heck. I mean, I don't have the exact number, but there are numbers of folks who are losing their lives in these snooper trucks that are elbow trucks over, a bridge and underneath it, if you can imagine. So you look at a drone like in the Carolinas where you have like the Skydio drone that got the BV loss waiver to go and do the bridge inspections, beyond visual line of sight, and to get up in those GPS denied environments and to be able to, do that 3D mapping and create some excellent orthomosaics and ultimately a 3D model of that particular infrastructure, and being able to really get in there and see where their integrity issues might be to be able to solve those in advance. I mean, we've been hearing about bridges collapsing, quite a bit around different places. And I know living here in Metro Detroit, our infrastructure and our roads are really, really tough because of that freeze thaw, that we have that goes on and trying to maintain them. So trust me when I tell you, like, it's so exciting to go and see that we can, again, keep people safer, not in these that snooper truck is probably one of the weirdest things I've ever seen before, but it doesn't look safe. I can tell you that much. And just to save all that time and money and be much more effective and efficient. I think it's always important to really, even when you look at public safety, a lot of them started saying, well, the cost of, a helicopter and the time it takes to deploy, and, you start looking at those costs. I think it's important to know that, like, nobody's looking to take away those aviation assets, right? I think we're just looking to find ways to augment it. And that's what's really, really important. So this isn't about, taking people's jobs. This isn't about that type of, movement. It's more about trying to augment some of those traditional, inspections, or also trying to find a safer tool for law enforcement sometimes than going down a fatal funnel, where there may be somebody that's looking to do them harm. It's just augmenting with this technology. It's not looking to replace. So the pilot is always important.
Well, you talk about machine learning. Do you think the Skydio approach of wanting to be a little bit more autonomous is going to be the future? Is this something that companies are interested in? Do you think the quality is going to be the same, or would you rather have something where there's more of a pilot involved rather than I'm going to call him a software engineer that punches in the coordinates and then sends the drone? What do you think?
I was just trying to hit on it at the end, because sometimes you'll go and maybe, you go to so many different these conferences, and we hear a lot of different speakers and people that, in this industry right now, especially, you have a lot of self-proclaimed, folks that feel like they're the expert on this technology all the way around. And and you hear things like, the pilot doesn't matter, the drone is going to go and just, fly and do all this stuff on its own. It's like, you got to pull that back right out of the gate and say, you started off wrong on that, right? The pilot always matters. Like, that is, and I don't see that really going away anytime soon, right? So the whole George Jetson, yeah.
I've heard that for 20 years in the airplane. Yeah, I've heard that 20 years in the airplane side of things. The pilot, they can fly anything as
so
pilot. But
you're never going to lose that part of it. So the quality of inspections, in my mind, is going to really come down to how much of those practitioners and subject matter experts are contributing to all of the machine learning and all of the labeling and identifying of all of the different assets that are on these structures, but then also being able to provide feedback of how you can tell when one of those components is being assessed at a level that it needs to be addressed. Something that's a critical failure versus moderate versus low. There's a lot of judgment calls, right? And, same thing with like a RoboCop situation. Okay. You're not going to have the RoboCop situation because, it just doesn't work that way. You need to, it's a very gray, set of things. Everything's not black and white. So you have to be able to leverage a lot of the expertise and the knowledge that's going on out there. So I think where you're going to see the machine learning come into play and be so helpful is at least being able to go and capture all of those, the data of those images and the areas that we're really looking at. Because the Skydio drone, I was listening to Dexter Lewis, he was basically talking about like, you've got the Skydio drone that will go and autonomously fly, do a 3D scan of, let's just say, one telephone pole, right? One electrical pole. And it gives you, let's say, 40 photos. And out of the 40 photos, how many did you really need to look at each one of those components? 12, right? So how can we take that maybe 2.5 minute flight of 40 or 48 photos and then minimize it down to just the 12 that you actually need? Because all that extra data captured takes up storage as well as time, which will ultimately equal, a financial impact later. But the processing it's going to go much faster from that standpoint. And so it's those types of things that you want to look at in terms of, is the machine learning going to take over? Are these drones going to go and just do all of these completely on their own? No, they're going to have a human interface that's going to be able to validate. And when you also think about, we all might assess a particular situation in a different way. Like, if you're a big IOU or you're a small cooperative or a municipal, and what is your rating system for something that is a moderate potential failure, low, or critical? Like, that assessment scale of how you're evaluating those things, it's going to differ from place to place. So how to make sure that those assessments and evaluations of that particular asset, if it needs to be addressed right now versus at a later point in time, I don't think that there's any set standard across the board, right? I think that there's some that are probably much more obvious than others, but it's not a set, across the board. So it's just important to know that, again, you want to have someone, and again, for us, it's about having that industry expertise, bringing people together, leveraging that knowledge that they're using. And sometimes the tech specs say that the drone, if you just went by tech specs alone, well, this drone should be able to go, let's say, map a solar field really well for us in terms of actually doing some type of post-processing data analysis of each one of those solar panels to make sure that they're functioning properly. According to the tech specs, it should work. But if it's not capturing the data at the right angle and in the right methodology, when you get to post-processing your deliverable, it's not going to give you what it is that you wanted. So you really do need to have that expertise and folks that know in the industry, what is really going to work. Just because the tech specs say it will doesn't necessarily mean that that's the case. So we try to add value not only to the customers with trying to assemble these types of technology solutions unmanned, whether they're underwater, on the ground, or in the air. But we also try to add value to the manufacturers and telling them, if you made a few different modifications to the way that the drone collects data, you would have a rock star product here for this inspection type. And so now manufacturers are like, oh, this is great. Like we're learning from, our dealers who are bringing, their practitioners and customers to the plate. And since this is such an evolving new thing, it leaves a lot of, if you have a manufacturer who's open to and wanting that feedback and looking to make it better and improve it. I mean, Parrot is another really good example. They just came out with the Parrot AI, and then you have the Gov edition, Anafi USA. But the new AI being, the first 4G drone that, again, when you look at connectivity and being able to go some distance, but having 48 megapixel sensor on it really is advantageous to the inspection world as well. And so again, they're constantly looking for ways to improve that and be able to connect it better to the actual use case. And that's where we come in, where we try to help with that part of it. We also have a service center, I should mention, and we talk about the unscheduled landings that people have, or just some of the technical help that they might need. That's what the service center is there for: warranty coordination, startup services, that type of thing. And we work with a lot of drone service providers. We are not one of them, but we work with them. And so in many cases, you will see drone service providers, and this is becoming more and more popular, where you have large companies. We want them to have their own programs. We want to empower them to. But sometimes you get those big projects, you just don't have enough people to do it. So you can augment what it is that you're doing for your inspections through drone service providers to come out and be able to capture that data if you need it processed, as well as post-processing. But one of the things, go ahead.
So Tim, let me stop you here for a second. I'm glad you pointed out the importance of drone pilots. Real quick, for Gresco, how many drone pilots do you guys have, and are they all Gresco employees, or do you also hire contractors or third party, let's say drone pilots?
So we have about 15 altogether on our team, and I make it a requirement that everyone is a Part 107 commercial drone pilot, and that also has some industry tie-in and also platform-specific subject matter expertise. So, because one person, if you only had a couple people, it's very hard. I mean, when we just had DJI alone, and a lot of people don't talk about this, right? But I'll throw it out for what it is, because I'm relatively new to the industry. But there was really one game in town, right? Like, I mean, the largest drone maker in the world. And they had multiple different platforms, and they worked. They were really great, and they are a solid product in terms of their sensors and their hardware and their functionality. And so what I have found is it was hard enough sometimes to try to keep straight all of the different specifications and use cases with just that ecosystem alone. But now when you start opening it up, because, having both domestic and international options as it relates to drones, that's where I was going with this, is that just when we thought like, okay, we've got our hands around this now, we can understand, our way forward. Certain things start happening, geopolitical as well as data compliance. And there's a lot of different, components that go there. And all of a sudden, it's a much larger ecosystem outside of just one manufacturer. And you are now in just uncharted territory, because what we want to do is not only make sure that our, either public safety or utility folks are getting the right type of drone for the inspection that they're looking to do, the right software, the right components to get the deliverable. But now we have to be talking to them about, does it need to be a blue UAS drone, right? Does it need to have an NDAA compliance portion to it? So anything that's transmitting, collecting or storing information, there's it's like back in the day with the copy machines that we'd roll right out the back door when we were ready to throw them away. Didn't realize that they had an internal component for everything that was copied off of it, right? So there is a heightened awareness to that, and I think that also makes our jobs really interesting, because we might have a solution that could work for them from a practicality standpoint, but from a compliance standpoint, it's not something that will work well for them. And our drone service providers are always having to determine in what area or venue that they are working for a customer to augment their services, what type of data compliance and or drone status, whether it be Blue UAS or not, that they're allowed to use while performing some of their augmented work for that customer. So again, it continues to make things very challenging but interesting. And the ingenuity that you start seeing, and like Inspired Flight was one of our newer adoptions, and just taking a look at the craftsmanship and to the level that they try to go and make sure that they do a build that's going to be specific for particular inspections that are being conducted. And it's just awesome to see so many new players to the game here in this industry, and some that I believe are going to be around for a long time. So every other week we're going and testing and looking out for new technology that can be used both for mission and inspection purposes. And so be in Chicago on Monday, taking a look at another underwater inspection solution as well. So it's exciting, it's fun, and being able to serve customers who are serving communities across the country. I don't think there's anything much more fulfilling than that.
It's interesting you mentioned newcomers to the business. This week, Skyward announced that they were going to shut down their program in order to focus on the ground robots, on terrestrial robots. And this is a big company. Skyward has, obviously they're tied to Verizon. They had a lot of money, and they decided that this may not be the space that they want to be in, and they want to refocus the team. It's kind of a double question for you, but do you think this is a sign of things to come with this industry, where maybe it's not either as big as we think it is, or it's not as profitable as some larger companies thought it would be? And then two, how is this affecting your customers as far as the service that they provided? Do you see that there is a need for this kind of service out there? Because you obviously deal with more larger customers that may be using their kind of service.
No,
so it's kind of a double-sided question. But
I think what's important is to have manufacturers ask themselves, just like us as drone value added resellers, those VARs that are all over the country, like the ones that have been around for a while, we're just like us as well. We were all things to all people. What do you need? We can do it. Is it real estate? Is it agriculture? Is it public safety? Is it utility? We can do it all. But really, can you do it all? Can you have all that expertise? And that, no, it doesn't work that way. What we had to do is we had to reflect and say, who are we? And what do we do? Like, what do we want to be known for? And so for us, as well as the manufacturers, look at a company, you got like the Elios, like that particular product there. I mean, they know what they want. Like they want to be the best of the confined space drone that you can find. Like that's where they want to be. The Brink drone, the best tactical drone where you got two-way communication and you can bring a volatile situation to a peaceful resolve. They know what they want to do. Census, they know they want the fixed wing long range for multiple uses. Wingtra, an amazing mapping drone, fixed wing drone. Most wicked takeoff and landing is so awesome to see that, the spiral out and come back down. I just, we spent a whole lot of time over at some solar fields or solar farms here in the last couple of weeks, just watching that thing work and how effective and efficient it is. And I guess that's the other thing that just makes this so exciting, is that working with those manufacturers who know who they are and what their purpose-built drones are for. And when you're focused on enterprise drones, and that's all we do is enterprise grade unmanned technology solutions. That's what we do. I'm not saying that consumer or prosumer drones don't have a component there, right? A space, but you can see the manufacturers are becoming much more purposeful in the ones that are, and the ones that are really, not trying to be all things to all, inspections or all mission work. When they're really focused on what they're doing, it is really amazing to see what, again, the innovation that they're coming up with. And so, for us,
that's what we tell our customers. Actually, we have students asking all the time, and this is for our listeners, because I know a lot of our listeners are trying to get into the business or have been in the business for a little bit. We always tell them to focus on that one thing. Don't try to do everything at the average level. Try to do one thing really well, and that's when you're successful. So I'm glad
it's great. And even when you're focused, right? Like, I mean, our company's been in the electric utility for so long, but those use cases, you can't even imagine. I mean, just from generation, transmission to distribution, there are so many different application uses for this stuff, and how you go about acquiring those and actually figuring out, how some of these different platforms might work. And then there might be the alternative use, right? Where the manufacturer did not think about their drone being used in a particular way that it gets used. And then we share that with them and they're like, well, that's not really what, it was designed for. But if you're telling me it works and it's something that can provide and add value, and then this is something that we might want to evolve into a new iteration that really specifically meets those. And so that's another fun part that we get to kind of work with some of the manufacturers and say, look, if there was a few modifications or even just a firmware update that did these other functions, it could really be, a valuable asset in this space or in this use case. And so that's also been very exciting. So our customers, whether they're drone service providers or whether they are, it doesn't matter, what industry focus or what portion of the phase of power they're in, but with them challenging us all the time on, I need you to find me a solution that can do multiple, inspections at once or multiple missions at once. That just really kind of excites our team. It puts us into a position where like it's a challenge, and we're like, challenge accepted. We'll figure something out. Greg, you're no different. I mean, you are constantly like always trying to be right on that leading edge of things. You're always looking to say, all right, well, you're putting things to the test. You're doing the deep dives. And one of the things that I found why our relationship is so great, and Gresco is just, Pilot Institute, Greg, your whole team, you guys are always about, look, we're not trying to play favorites here. We're just trying to say, does it do what it says it's supposed to do? How is the performance? Is it, because there's so much hype in the social media circles. And, in some cases, like the media, the social media hype is so great that, you think that there's, the ability to order these drones and have them tomorrow and actually start putting them to work. And they're not even out of a beta phase yet, but they are being marketed like they are ready to go. So it's so great that you keep people informed and updated and let them know that, I just remember, as a police officer, I always had to, combat that whole, what do they call it? You're in a courtroom and all of a sudden it's like, oh, you can't get the evidence in like 10 minutes. You can't have DNA processing like in a half hour. And, the CSI effect, just, you got to debunk that right out of the gate, because if you keep watching, commercial, I see the drone that's going like under the water coming out and it's like doing all these, things. It's like, whoa, that's really cool. Like I want to go get that one. And it's like, it doesn't even exist, or I can't get that. And, tethered drones that are, in, 80-mile-an-hour winds and, like almost in the eye of a hurricane type thing. It's like, does that really work? Is that happening? So, yeah.
Maybe this is a good point to shift gears a little bit. You're mentioning all these things that people see out on social media, on television, and it creates these expectations and these ideas of what drones can do. Now, in order for all that stuff to become real, of course, the regulatory environment is very important as well. And within the drone industry, that means we're talking about the FAA. And for instance, when they came up with Part 107 that allowed people to start using drones commercially, which was a big step up basically for the entire industry. The next big thing arguably is remote ID, and I'm curious to hear from you what your opinion is about remote ID. How crucial do you think it is? What are some of the downsides or concerns perhaps that you may have? And it'd be interesting for you to share that.
So I think we have those. We meet with all of our manufacturers either biweekly, monthly. It's always on a regular basis, and of course we always seem to start out with the question, how are you resolving this, this requirement that's coming down the pike? Is there a solution that you have in place? And if people are purchasing, a costly drone right now, they're kind of like, is it going to be compliant though? Like, can I get a letter that says it's going to be compliant? So we worry about it from some of those standpoints. But when you look at it at its core, like we had for quite some time an airspace, security program with the Aeroscope program. And so we really, you have like, there's a lot of different, folks that do, drone detection work out there and some counter drone measures. But again, when you have to decide like who we are and what we do, to try to have a whole separate program that's on drone detection and why that's important, understanding situational awareness of your environment that you're in airspace. Aerial Armor, one of our partners, they have just, they've taken it to a different level, and with their software engineers and their mobile applications and their multi-layered approach to it, it's important. It is very important, and especially important in complex environments. So when you kind of translate that over to remote ID, much like the ADS-B with manned aircraft or crewed aircraft, it's one of those. I think it's a very important piece. How we go about getting there, I think, is where things get a little bit challenging, right? So to what degree and what method and how costly it's going to be, and what the actual standard is going to wind up being. It just has to be something that's attainable, and it's something that's going to have to be able to retrofit onto legacy drones. Like, you just want to make sure that anytime that you're coming up with, in the regulatory world, some type of a mandate, that you're just doing it in a way that can be adopted, can be embraced, and can be understood. And having been in law enforcement for a long time, right? Who goes to the sporting match to, cheer on the referees? Nobody, right? So having been a referee of life, like, it's interesting to see the legislature will come out with these laws and stuff that, we might not agree with, but we're charged with the responsibility of enforcing and educating other people as to why they're important and that type of thing. So I just think that the way that this is being communicated and how it can be adapted, and of course, how it can be acquired, unfunded mandates are a world that I used to live in, especially being a local municipal police chief, right? You'll have all types of mandates that start coming out, but whether they're funded or not and have the ability to go out there to enforce to the degree that they're, seeking to be done can be challenging. So I think that there's ways to go with that yet. And I think that they really, we just need to be mindful about what the implementation looks like in that and how people can get it.
I'm glad you pointed it out, because I know from first responders that they work with limited budgets, getting a drone program up and running and investing in equipment. And the commercial drones tend to be a lot more expensive than the consumer drones that people typically get, of course. I mean, we're talking $10,000, $20,000, $30,000. And then you get the additional equipment and the training of people. So being able to get more of a lifetime or use time out of that equipment is important. The other concern that we've heard from a lot of people when it comes to remote ideas, making the pilot location public information, meaning that anybody basically can trace down where that person is in real time flying that expensive commercial drone. Is that something that you're concerned about? Pilot information being public?
I was a foot soldier for the Constitution for a number of years, so I very much feel people's privacy is important. Clearly, I think that, again, how that implementation works and to what degree, in what circumstances information like that would be made widely available versus less so, something that would be through some type of maybe a judicial process or otherwise, if there were an infraction or if there was some type of a behavior with that particular technology that was potentially being used in a nefarious way. So I do feel that privacy is important. I also feel like the legitimate, especially in this industry right now, the legitimate folks that are out there doing commercial-based drone pilot work, I don't think that it necessarily matters, right? Like, if you're out there and you're in areas that you're supposed to be, if you're following the regulations, and if you are working in an environment that, again, you have all of the legal and otherwise regulatory right to be, I don't know why that would be such a concern or such an issue. Of course, I haven't really gone through, all of the different aspects of this, but I will tell you that this piece of technology, just like anything else, if it were to be involved in a crime, you'd obviously want to make sure that you followed the judicial process in order to acquire any type of forensic information from that drone, to include its telemetry, its pilot information, serial numbers, and all that type of thing. So it's important for people to understand that it's emerging technology, and but that doesn't mean that there's not the appropriate pathways to acquire it.
So, talking about regulation, and Florida recently passed this rule for public safety use of UAS, and specifically banned 2 brands of drones, DJI and Hotel. Is this something that you see having repercussion down the line? I know we've talked to a lot of our public safety customers, and just in general, this seems to be something that's going to be making their job a lot more difficult. You used to be a police officer, like you said, and in the police department. So is this something that
I
we
think what's
should be careful
important
with
when
for the
you
rest
look
of
at
the
it from
country
this
as setting a
perspective,
precedent?
you have a wide adoption of technology that's out there, and that technology, it does collect, store, and transmit data. It does, right? To what degree that it's transmitting back to foreign servers and different things like that. I'm not a data analysis expert, but what I will say is these are tools, right? These are in many cases life-saving tools. Whether it's all of the different scenarios public safety as well as utility is going out and using these for. Here's the issue that I'm hearing from so many of my former colleagues in the public safety world on that front. The adoption and the investment and the use of those tools has been so critical in protecting communities, helping keep them connected and helping keep them energized. Like to take those away in a way that you don't supplant or replace really does create a lot of frustration. It also pulls away a resource, a life-saving resource, and so look, if there are concerns and there's legitimate reasons that we should be concerned about national security interests that are being compromised because of the transmitting of particular data, especially surrounding critical infrastructures, things like that, then I am all for it. Definitely we need to move forward with some type of action. I don't have all the information on the legitimacy or not, but what I would say is you got to think about giving those agencies who have spent not just their own local money, but federal and state money into these, your tax-paying citizens. And if we're being good stewards of taxpayer resources in those positions, we've got to be thinking about if we're going to take away a potential life, saving tool, what are we supplanting? What are we giving it back? What are we putting in its place? It's no different than, the FBI going and closing down
100%.
a pain clinic where a doctor was giving out copious amounts of opioids and all of a sudden going in and, do the right thing. I mean, this is a doctor who's doing this in the wrong way. It's a healthcare fraud situation. You go in and you take that doctor out of that situation. You close down that clinic. Well, you have a whole host of people in that community that feel in their mind they were legitimately getting the type of pain medication that they feel that they needed for whatever those conditions were, and that goes away. Then they're going to go to buying pills. When those get too expensive, they'll go to heroin. So you can't create this situation where you have these life-saving tools that are out there, and then in the flick of a switch, you can't use them anymore. So there just needs to be a plan that if we're going to go ahead and ban those, and we can't use those, or we can't, there's a future date. Well, let's make sure on the other side of what we do, we at least try to create a way for them to be able to replace those with ones that are not going to have that same concern. So Skydio and Parrot and some others that we've really been working with, especially down in that area, have been incredibly important.
So let me pause you here then for a second, because this is like the perfect segue to my next and the last question of this interview. What do we replace it with? So the government came up with a solution, Blue SUAS, the Blue drones, a select group of manufacturers with drones that should be completely manufactured and designed and assembled here in the US. As far as I know, most of them still contain parts that are made in China, but at least the drones are being assembled here in the United States. These drones tend to be a lot more expensive, and they are being delivered in smaller quantities, so they might not be able to serve the communities and all those first responders that are looking to get drones in their programs. What is your opinion about Blue SUAS? Do you see this as a viable solution, or are there still concerns?
So I don't think there's going to be anyone in the industry that will dispute the fact that there are definitely differences between more domestic or some of the other international drones that are within that in terms of their sensor capabilities, overall construction, availability. Of course, I mean, there are definitely differences. They're not all disparaging, but for the most part, you have the world's largest drone maker or two that have literally developed ecosystems. They've had opportunities over so many years to really, refine their products. That I think that, of course, with emerging markets here, I think it opened up a really great opportunity for U.S. based manufacturers to really start, acquiring some funding and opportunities to really start trying to address this. So I find that part of it to be really, pretty awesome. But on the other side of it, I do recognize it is a costly, move when you're trying to replace the others and you're trying to get the same level of flight time and sensor capabilities and some of the other aspects to them, even third party, integrations and things like that. It takes time. So we're razor focused right now on really trying to make sure that we are identifying a diverse set of opportunities that meet the compliance, meet the Blue UAS standards, but also are able to more than adequately conduct that inspection, or they are able to go into that mission and accomplish that. So, again, people like, Blake Resnick over there that's putting together that very specific product. I'm talking to FX all the time about how they're trying to get their stuff moved along. You look at, the ingenuity that Skydio is coming out with, and it's just continuing to come. But to your point, are they widely available? Are they always within the pricing structure?
Mm-hmm.
And in some cases, they're not just a capital expense now. They're also an operational expense. And for some folks in their procurement, that becomes very problematic, that, that there's an ongoing cost. So we just got to find ways around those to make it work for them. And so we're constantly looking at what is another adoption that makes sense, and that is something that is proven to be able to work. So again, for us, we find the best way to do that is to work with the manufacturer, the practitioner, subject matter expert, and go out and actually conduct these inspections, and also put these pieces of technology out into the field, because we want to make sure that the customer has what they need when they need it, and not try to just sell them something based on, we're not a box mover by any means. We want to be a value add. And we want the long-term relationship, and that's what Gresco is really all about. We're here to see you through the whole life cycle of your drone program. If you have one, if you don't have one yet, we're here to help you build it. And we really do specialize with lots of enterprises, very large companies or organizations, and helping them be able to scale this. So it's important for those pilots not only to know the mission type or the inspection type, but it's also important for them to know the platform, its limitations, where it excels, and have experience in that. And so there's a lot of really, the evolving, drones and boxes, and the DFR program that Chula Vista and Fritz Reber out there and his crew, Captain Redmond, the rest of them. I mean, it's been so great to meet all these people in this drone industry, and it's become just like this whole new family thing. But the cast of characters, it's pretty awesome. I mean, it keeps it very engaging, and again, it's we do a lot of traveling. I mean, all over the place, and we sometimes are away from our families. So generally, like if can't wait to come back out there and meet with you guys. But generally, I always give a toast at every dinner, because Gresco is also, I told you, we don't miss lunches, and we definitely want to make sure everyone's joining us for dinners. That's for sure. So you guys got to hook up with us when we're out there. But I always make a toast at each one of those dinners with our drone partners. Ask McBride. I mean, he's usually right at my right side on it, but it's always, to the family that we have, right into the one that we make along the way. And so I feel like with this drone industry, I could pick up the phone just like I could in law enforcement. I graduated from the FBI National Academy. I have contacts globally that I could call up and just say, hey, I'm a National Academy grad. Can you help me with this case or whatever I got going on? I thought that was the only kind of thing that existed that way. In the drone world now, like, you start getting out, we're in these circles. I just have to pick up a phone. And even if they're a competitor, if you will, it doesn't matter. Like, what can we do to help you? And, there's more than enough business for everybody to go around, right? And the ones that are out there to do this for the right reasons, the ones that are wanting to be here for the long term, we're not looking to just move a quick box and make a quick sale and beyond, right? We want to make sure we're there for the long term. So I appreciate everything that, Greg, you having me on and be a part of this, and look forward to, contributing in the future. And we got way smarter, more engaged, people than me on our team. I'd rather have them speak with you and talk about the great work they're doing. So I'll get them over to you.
And, you know, we always end up the conversation with what is your favorite drone? And I know you've flown a lot of different ones. So maybe you can tell us the drone that you would pick up if you were to just go and have fun.
Yeah, I don't know. You know what? It's tough. I love Skydios.
I'm sure she loves
the
that.
obstacle avoidance. Like I just, you know, up north, you know, I'll go flying right into the trees and like, take it out on the boat, have it track the kids while they're on the tubes and stuff. And no, I don't know. Like, you know, it's been with all of these new drones that have continued to come out. I'm telling you, like the wing for fixed wing and the sense, I don't know. It's really hard. Census with that detect and avoid, like when you have ADS-B sensing unit on it, where it's you know, you get a plane in the air, that thing, it's just awesome. It's on this mission flight, right? And it detects, it comes down, it goes into an orbit, and then it'll come right back on. And it's just, I'm telling you, I think that it is tough, you know, with some of the regulatory pieces that are impacting some of the industry. There's no doubt, right? My heart goes out to some of those, especially the public safety agencies that have to try to retool right now and do it in quick order. But man, there's some really cool technology that's coming out there that's not just a toy, but it's a tool. And you know, we just got to respect it, and we just got to make sure that we have safety integrated into every aspect of the flight. Never lose sight and focus of the pilot. But you know, I'm happy to hear that there does seem to be some leeway that's being given here with FAA lately. They really seem to be not wanting to sort of, you know, crush, you know, people's interest in wanting to take this technology to the next level and really have it evolve. So I don't know, Greg, you know, from your perspective, are you seeing the same thing where we're starting to see a little bit more, you know, wanting to advance this a little bit?
Yeah, I think I think many folks at the FAA want to see this working. I think it's the overall machine as the FAA as a general entity that's a bit harder to move forward, just because it's a bureaucratic nightmare. And that's, you know, nothing that has to do with, I think, the people at the FAA. I think it's just the machine in itself is just a slow government entity, and we'll all have to deal with this, unfortunately. But I don't think anyone at the FAA is trying to slow this down purposely. I think it's just the way that it happens. So we'll see beyond visual line of sight. We'll see remote ID. We'll see all these things in due time.
Well, I'll look forward to getting together with you soon.
At government speed. Let's put it this way.
You know, it's just a pleasure to be on with you guys, and I definitely appreciate the opportunity to talk about the place I love to work at. So,
awesome.
You know,
we definitely appreciate having you on for sure. And we will, this episode will go live on Tuesday. We do episodes every Tuesday. So if you're one of our followers, you know when these things go live. And Tim, thank you so much for joining us and talking about your passion.
Thanks, guys. You guys have a great day.
Awesome.
Right,
thank you for being on the show.
All right, thanks.